San Antonio, Texas. Florida and Auburn have reached their destination. 4 wins down, 2 to go. But these two Titans are not alone. These are the best teams college basketball has to offer. Texas is called the Lone Star State. While there are many stars here in San Antonio, only one will be the Lone Star standing. The biggest march continues for one more weekend. This is the Final Four.
Thank you, Zeke. Yep, no, that is definitely the big topic of everything right now. We have made it to the Final Four for sure. And so we are going to be talking about the Final Four today on the second part of this show. But let's recap how we got here through the Elite Eight. It was another fun weekend of basketball. The SEC broke the record, or tied the record rather, for most teams all time in the Elite Eight. But Maddie, let's start out with the teams that got the job done and the winners. And let's start out with Florida and Texas Tech. Maddie, your thoughts on this game and what was, the return trip for the Florida Gators to the Final Four in quite some time?
Yeah, I felt a little bit of deja vu there from watching this Texas Tech Arkansas game, as I feel like everyone did. I unfortunately wasn't able to watch, but kept checking updates, and it was like, oh, there's like 2 minutes left, and Florida's down like nine points at this point. I was like, this is not going the way I expected it to. And then I'd refresh and be less and less, and oh, Florida came back and won it. So
Yeah.
obviously went in, got the highlights after the game when I got back home, and Walter Clayton Jr. continues to excite for the Florida Gators. Coming back, getting those major late threes really helped push them over the top. So, another fantastic game for Florida, and one that shows that even if they're down, you put them in a corner, they're going to fight their way back out.
I thought while I was watching this thing that, like, they're late. Williams is playing good. There's a couple of players that are making big plays for Texas Tech, and they build up that lead, and Todd Golden calls timeout, and I'm like, this is it. If Florida doesn't hit the gas pedal right now, it's over. Like, this is done. Their run here in the tournament's over with. We talked about them possibly having a stinker coming up, or being overdue for a stinker, and here it is. This is the one. They had a stinker. They did not shoot well. They did not play their best basketball game, but they really found the gas pedal late and made the comeback. Texas Tech was up 10 on them. There were just a few minutes left to play, and they surged on what was a 16-2 run or something like that very late in the game. Let me just double check the run total. Yeah, 21-6 with 5 minutes left in the game is when it started. And that was the run that finally propelled Florida over the hump. And Maddie, you're exactly right. Walter Clayton Jr. is having some big moments in this game. That lead-taking three that he hit with 59 seconds left to play was, of course, the one that just stood out to everyone. And you're sitting there quoting Zoolander going, he's so hot right now. But he's just on fire, and he's playing a great tournament. But, overall as a team, this was the game that Florida did not play their best. And they're going to have to find those tools again before their Final Four game. But, they kind of got it out of the way. And then here late, they were down to shooting 28%, something like that, from three. Finds the on button. Goes out and shoots 37.5%. They just flipped that switch. Walter Clayton finished this game with 30 points. He's the sung hero, but Thomas Houck also had an outstanding game in this one. 20 points and 11 rebounds. He was 54% from the floor and knocked down 4 threes in this game for the Gators. He was working nonstop as an impact player in this one. JT Toppin, again, this is another game that we saw an SEC team. He got his, but he was a little bit more like he can't be the one to beat you. And that was kind of the factor in how Florida kind of played the rest of this game out. 20 points, 11 rebounds for JT Toppin in this. But it was kind of the quietest 20 points you'll ever see on a basketball court there. Or at least he got faded in my mind or something like that late in the game. I don't remember JT Toppin having a 20-point impact, it felt like. But Florida came through, hit the shots they needed, found the gas pedal, got the turnover, Texas Tech to turn the ball over, and it was It was a collapse by Texas Tech in a game that they had ready to win. And you're right, there was a portion of the fan base that was not going, for us as Arkansas fans that were just sitting there praying for the downfall of Texas Tech after that, just a little bit. So, yeah, Florida wins by 5. They're on their way to the Final Four, first Final Four appearance in quite some time. Todd Golden, for a coach that never had an NCAA tournament win until this year, 4 straight's not something you're going to turn your nose up to, especially when you got a Final Four here in year 3 with the Gators. Big season for him. Now they've got a big, tough test coming up in what's going to be a huge rematch against the Auburn Tigers, and let's talk about that game. This one was just I don't know the best way to describe it, but like Auburn got out early, built up that lead just a little bit. It looked like they were going, it's like at any moment you were kind of expecting Michigan State to make a run, but Auburn kind of kept them at arm's length all the way until the last few minutes of this game. 70-64, Auburn's punching its ticket to the Final Four. They played a tremendous basketball game, but that 17-0 run from the 15-28 mark to the 10-29 mark was huge for Auburn in this one. Maddie, kind of your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I caught a little bit of this one in between baseball games. And it was during that stretch when I was able to tune in, and then until halftime. And I was like, I mean, Tom Izzo's Tom Izzo. They're going to come out. They're going to get that kind of comeback run that they need, which they had a bit of a comeback run up until halftime.
Late, yeah.
I think, if that momentum stayed there, if they did that a little bit earlier, we might be talking about a completely different ball game. But like you said, Auburn kept them at arm's length. And then as the game progressed, we saw a couple, I don't want to say like step downs, but some things for Auburn, that they wouldn't want to happen. The slight Janai Broom injury where he goes out but comes back in. I think that was a big pivotal moment as well. But the fact that he came back in, I feel like the team was able to rally around that and continue to pull out. So great game for Janai Broom. 25 points, kind of just what we're expecting from him now. He had a double-double.
Rebounds, yep.
So, I mean, it's kind of one of those, like, we need to talk about other people on the team, but Janai Broom is still doing Janai Broom things to keep us from that.
He was the big standout. He was the big standout in this one. It was one where he was being very active on the glass, very active right there in the battle with everyone else. Here's the crazy thing: if he doesn't come down with 14 boards, is the game change? Because you're talking about Michigan State won the rebound battle. Michigan State actually. They turned the ball over more, but they stopped turning it over there in the second half. The second half was a very competitive second half, and Michigan State actually outscored Auburn in the second half, 40-37. If Janai Broom didn't have the game he has, I don't know if Auburn wins. It's one of those, like that first half in combination with Janai Broom's performance is really what the difference was in this game. Sure, you had Todd Pettiford putting up 10 points. He had some big shots, goes plus 11 in this game and picks up 3 assists. Miles Kelly, 8 points from him. He knocks down a 3 in this one. Not his best shooting night, but Chad Baker Mazzara did a lot of the dirty work to the things that go in that don't always make the stat sheet. 31 minutes for him, 6 points, 2 rebounds, but he goes plus 15 in this game. Had to be a really good defensive performance from him with that guard play that Michigan State has, and that's the key thing to kind of look at. Is that Michigan State kind of needed all their guards to get going at some point, because that was kind of their path and their hope. Akins had a good game. Richardson had a good game. Jeremy Fears was really the one who was the missing piece. He only comes away with 2 points and 4 rebounds in this game. Auburn's defense had an impact on him. He had a rough shooting game. Normally one of their better shooters overall. But didn't even make a 3 in this game. Didn't even end up attempting one. Just one of the rougher games for him so far this season, and it comes at the worst time with the trip to the Final Four on the line. Auburn made some silly mistakes late to close this game out, and granted, a lot of that was from the different defensive pressure that Michigan was on, desperate, trying to put the things down. You just don't want to see that stuff going into the Final Four, but this is it. This is it. It is the return to the Final Four since 2019, the second Final Four in school history. And it was the expectation at the end of the year that this should be a Final Four team. Um, Bruce Pearl has won an SEC championship. They're in the Final Four, and they're on the pursuit of school history right now. And like I said, if you looked at the big board that we have put together, this had gotten to the point now where they were coming into the tournament the only team that matched every national championship trend that we keep track of, that we keep tabs on since 2000 or since 2004. They were the only team that checked every single box. I don't think it's a surprise they're here at all. I think it's a heck of an accomplishment and one that should have been expected based on the performance that they had this year.
Yeah, definitely so. I was just at kind of at the disbelief phase of like that, well, they're gonna fall off at some point just because, we're kind of used to that. But I guess, Bruce Pearl's kind of found out how to go over that hurdle and get here. So, nothing but excitement for Auburn fans right now.
Yeah, and like I said, he hadn't even made it past the Sweet 16 since the last time they made it to the Final Four. So maybe for like the story for Bruce Pearl at Auburn is if he makes the Sweet 16, he's gonna make the Final Four. Because they were at a point where they just it was an interesting storyline to keep up with is the fact of just how long it taken. But here he is back, the return trip, second trip in the last 6 years for this team, minus a COVID year. So essentially 5 seasons or 5 NCAA tournaments. 2 and 5 is not bad. That's 40% of the last tournament, so to speak. So it's been a good run so far for Bruce Pearl at Auburn. Now he's got a chance here to finish this whole thing off there in San Antonio and see if he can't punch his team's first national championship into the record books. And, that would sting their biggest rival, who has also been great in this conference the last couple of seasons and has risen to the level of basketball that they've been at. If Auburn were to steal that first national championship first, it won't be stolen, it'll be earned, but, it'll definitely feel, stolen out of the hands of Alabama fans, so to speak, more or less. And let's talk about that, Maddie, and let's go to the games that did not end in favor for the SEC. First one, Alabama Duke. We were texting back and forth about this game. There's a lot of different ways that we can talk about this one that went down on Saturday night. It was bad. It was not good, and Duke won 85-65. And we can share our thoughts real fast because we have a little bit more time. But I just don't want to just burn Alabama on the loss. I just really felt like if I'm to give my highlights, this was some of the worst ball I've seen Alabama play this year. That's one. Number two, I think the length from Duke really had an effect on the way they were playing basketball. Number three, I think they really were settling for threes more than trying to do the thing that they were really good at, which was get to the two. And I think that was a lot of it is that they needed to move Duke's rim protection away from the rim a little bit and stretch the floor with Grant Nelson's ability. And that really was a pain in the rear for Alabama all night. Anytime that their guards tried to get to the rim, shots were constantly being impacted by Duke with their length and their size that they have down low. And then finally, at the end of the game, when shots weren't falling, I just kind of felt like Alabama started playing Duke's basketball game, and that was not good for Alabama at all. It was the exact opposite of what we'd seen against BYU. It's like they had fallen into BYU's role and stopped playing the basketball game they needed to play to win.
Yeah, I mean, spot on analysis there, David. Like you said, we were texting back and forth, and I think at one point I was like, Alabama just seems to be like allergic to the hoop. Like it was like they would drive in, finally get an opportunity for a good two, and miss it. Like not wide open, but a very makeable shot. So then they didn't want to drive in. They wanted to shoot the three. They weren't falling for the three. And it was like a back and forth battle of, trying to figure out which opportunity was better. But for some reason, neither one of them were working. I mean, just looking at it, I don't know if we've had a game where we saw Alabama shoot under 36% from the field and 25% from three. It's just not Alabama basketball. So unfortunately, we were talking about Florida was due for a stinker game. I think this was definitely the one for Alabama. And unfortunately, it's not the one that they needed it to be.
I mean, Alabama won the glass. Like, if that should tell you something. Alabama won the glass. They had more blocked shots, believe it or not, than Duke. And they had a pretty good game
Yep.
with everything besides the shooting. I mean, I think what just really encapsulates the game, and we got to move on and talk, I don't want to sit here and talk about it this way that long, but I think the moment that really, summed up the whole game to me was I can't remember who the guard was who came in for a layup, but they shot a layup. They missed the layup. Grant Nelson got the board, goes back up, and shoots off the backboard too strong, and it just rolls off.
Yep.
And two looks at the hole. Neither one goes in from exactly where you want to be. I can't get you any closer. Kind of 2-point shot like twice, and they couldn't get it. And the rim protection was that physical right there at the cup every time for Alabama. And they just, I don't know. I don't know if they just needed to play a little bit stronger or just move that rim protection out the best they could and play it around the floor a little bit better. It just never worked out. Um, and then Alabama's defense was extremely rough. Like that was the other thing too. So even when they were getting stops that they needed, they never could make up the difference in this basketball game, and that really wore them out as well. But Maddie, Nate Oates he was talking in this press conference after this game, and he was talking about what they've achieved at Alabama and how 99% of teams in the country were trade places with Alabama at the end of that Duke game. Um, I'm with that line of thought. Like, think about where Alabama's been. They've been consistently in the Sweet 16 the last couple of years, since 2000, since 2020. They've won some SEC championships. They've won some SEC tournaments. They've got some hardware to show for it, and they've gone to the first time in school history to back-to-back Elite Eights. That was this to me is just one of the best showings and periods of Alabama basketball of all time. I know that there's some older folks out there in Alabama who are going to talk about Wimp Sanderson, but like the Nate Oates era has been nothing but great for Alabama, and yeah, I think Nate Oates is spot on with this is where they want to be, and then we could talk about the future. They got a young core of freshman talent that they need to retain and develop. They got some redshirt guys sitting in, waiting for their moment to get in. And it's a matter of surviving the portal and bringing in what you need out of the portal now to replace these losses that you're going to have out of these key players moving forward. To me, from Alabama going forward, but I think they're in a good spot, and I think they're doing. They've got an exciting future ahead of them.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely not too much. I mean, I know Alabama fans wanted more, but not a dim spot at all because you're, like you said, moving forward with a program that's obviously grown an exponential amount over the last 5 to 10 years.
To me, though, this is more than anything else. The last 3 years, we've watched Mark Sears go from the glue guy to the leader to national recognition as one of the best players in the conference. In the Mark Sears era is now over at Alabama after this game. And when you look at it, those 3 years were a Sweet 16, a Final Four, and Elite Eight. I would say that that's a pretty good run at a school for the 3 years that he had spent there after he transferred from Ohio. He's had some good teammates around him, and we've seen his role on the team increase. So it is a closing chapter his career at Alabama, but it's been a great career at Alabama for Mark Sears. So the reign of terror for several teams, as they might put it, is over. But it's a legendary career for Mark Sears, and he should get respect as one of the best players to play basketball there in Tuscaloosa. I would feel like certainly in the modern era, the one that you got to put at the top of the list. Certainly over that 3-year career. But it was also the end of an era at Tennessee too, as they fell to Houston on Sunday and played. Well, Maddie, let's just say none of the losses really were pretty at all, but they fell to Houston 69-50 in the early part of the Sunday slate there in the Elite Eight. Maddie, your kind of thoughts, I'll bounce back on this because we expected a lot more out of Tennessee in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit it pretty accurately when we previewed this game that it could get really bad if Tennessee couldn't find their shots. And that's exactly what happened.
In the first half, yeah.
We got back to the point where it was very reliant on Chaz Lanier. I mean, dude came out with 17 points. Jordan Gainey also had 17 points. So good games from them. But you just needed a few more guys to get a couple more buckets. And that's kind of been the case with Tennessee. And I think that was, their downfall here. They're facing a good Houston team that's got people that can produce. Obviously, LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp went off in this basketball game, had some big nights. But you needed a little bit more on the offensive side from this Tennessee team, and that's was kind of our worry with them throughout the season. So kind of fitting that that's how it ended for them.
They took 11 threes, or they off their first 11 threes in the first half for Tennessee. They missed all of them. And there was a period where I think it was 3 shots in a row that Chaz Lanier was shooting a three, and it was miss, 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 and that's just frustrating because some of them were good looks too. But there just comes a time when you have to knock your shots down, and I just feel like that was Tennessee's case. They just could not hit their shots there early, and when you're facing that defense that Houston has, they tied Houston in the second half. The second half, differential wise, was closer to what we expect in this game. They both put up 35 points in the second half. It's just that Tennessee put up 15 points in the first half, and that really killed them. So it was just a game where it was like it was over before it was done with, or before it even got started, really. Houston took control because their offense was humming when Tennessee had no shooting yet. And that's that offensive consistency game to game. Tennessee this season can knock things down. They can play great basketball night to night, and then they would fall completely apart and look awful. And it was just a strange year when how's that? It just seems like year after year right now that Tennessee is missing this one thing to go to the next level. Like to get to this Final Four, they just needed more offensive consistency night to night. Here we are, Elite Eight game, and it comes back and bites them. Like last year is they just needed a little bit more 3-point shooting and someone else besides Dalton Connect to play at a high level of basketball. Just not the case last year. Same thing here, I really feel like. And Houston's good. Houston's a really good basketball team, and it's the best defense probably in the country. So tough team to come back to when you're not hitting your shots early in this game. I don't know if they were too wound up or what. Tennessee is in a peculiar spot. They have some talent coming in next year. They have some talented players that are still on this roster. It is an end of an era, though. Zakai Ziegler is going to be gone from this team. Mashak's going to be gone. Chaz Lanier, who was the big transfer this year, is going to be gone. So they don't have that piece anymore. Has been the Dalton Connect, Chaz Lanier kind of connection from year to year, is that key transfer that they brought in to be an offensive weapon for them. It's now the end of the era for that, and Tennessee is going to be one of these teams that see a desperate need to build in the portal this offseason. They have a lot of work to do. And then they also had a player that announced he was going to the transfer portal, Cameron Carr, if everyone remembers, way back in the non-conference, if I remember correctly. So they've got a lot of work to do coming into this one, because this is the closing chapter on this portion of the Rick Barnes era in Tennessee. Going forward, it's gonna, like I said, there's a lot of work to do to get Tennessee back to this point. This is kind of one of those, it should have happened this year. This should have been the team to do it. And now you're kind of going back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like I said, Rick Barnes has a lot of work cut out for him, but he's one of those coaches that always seems like he's going to be able to at least put something together, for the regular season, at least, if we keep that joke running. But another deep year for Rick Barnes, a lot deeper than we've seen in previous years. So, there's a light at the end of the tunnel for Tennessee fans, because they're still getting to this point. They just need to find a couple more pieces to get that national championship.
Yeah, and well, I'll put it this way too, in getting that first Final Four, but there's still a silver lining to this as well. It's hard making the Final Four, but Tennessee went to back-to-back Elite Eights for the first time in school history also this season. We've seen the rise of their program here in March as well the last couple of years. So there's your silver lining right there. You've done something now that this program's never accomplished over the last 2 years. And there's no doubt over the last 3 seasons, Tennessee has been a major player in this conference and who's going to win the SEC. So, I remember like 2 years, I picked Tennessee the 3 years of this show. I picked Tennessee the first 2 years of the show to win the SEC championship. They did okay the first year, didn't quite win it. And then I was right. They were my preseason pick, and then they were the champions. And then I picked them again, top 5 this year. And they still had a pretty good year overall. Like they finished 4th in this conference. They're a good basketball team. Rick Barnes has done really good things with Tennessee. It's just a sour note here that you just had expectations for something a little bit more and just not getting there, and now you're going back to the drawing board. But there is a silver lining of some really good progress that's still being made and writing in these chapters here in Tennessee basketball history. All right, Maddie. Well, we talked about the sour notes and the triumphs of 2 teams. Now we get to talk about what is the biggest weekend in college basketball. As we flip back, we have finally arrived here in San Antonio for the showdown that's about to take place at the Alamo Dome. Maddie, here's what's remarkable about this field and these 4 teams as we have Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston. Not only are these all the number 1 seeds, not only are these teams, excellent basketball teams that ran the field and everything else, and all season long have been teams that we've talked about. Not only all that, not only are these all conference champions in some regard, these are also all the top 4 teams in KenPom. Like 1 through 4, everyone here just arrived. And Maddie, here's what's even funnier. Do you remember when we said back at the when we talked about when we did the walkthrough of the bracket and everything else, and we were like, "Oh, let's talk about the bracket." And we came to an all 1 seed Final Four, and then when we saw that, and because we were just doing a rough scratch sheet Final Four, and we said, "There's no way that's the Final Four. We're not going to have all 1 seeds in the Final Four." Well, guess what? For the first time since 2008, we were right. All 1 seats in the Final Four as we went around and did our rough scratch sheet. We had all 4 teams in the Final Four in our first walkthrough of the bracket.
I mean,
and we doubted ourselves.
right? I was in shock when my personal bracket. I was like, oh, I picked all of my Elite 8 right, and the one team that I left out here, I had Auburn losing out and then Alabama beating Duke. Just because, I was like, there's going to be something. Like, it can't be all number 1s. Like, I really wanted to pick
something.
Those team, but I was like, it's not going to be all number 1. So I obviously freaked myself out on that portion.
I don't know what to say at this point. Like, this is insane. But these teams are all over net 35 in KenPom. So, like, it totally makes sense why these teams are here. These were excellent performances. Just to give everybody, like, a perception, and everything's different KenPom to KenPom year. But last season, when you look at these numbers, there was only 1 team in the country last year who was more than net 35 in KenPom. That was the UConn Huskies. We have 4 teams in the Final Four this year, all higher than net 35 in KenPom. That's outrageous. And Duke's at net 39 at this point. They're 4 points net better than UConn from last year, according to the computer, which just is going to make this a fascinating Final Four. These are the 4 best teams in the country. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Their schedules may leave something to be desired, but, on certain regards. But this is SEC teams, I'm not talking about you. But there's plenty of room for conversation who's going to win these things, because you have 4 teams that, according to KenPom, are just as good as UConn last year, who last season are unalived people on their way to a national championship last year. Let's start with the first game. It's SEC on SEC crime, and there's going to be a lot of orange and blue in the stands as Florida takes on Auburn. These are the number 3 and 4 teams in KenPom, all 1 seeds. The SEC tournament champion faces the SEC regular season champion. And of course, these 2 already did have a matchup in Neville Arena, where Florida took down Auburn 90-81 there on the road. Maddie, give me your thoughts on this matchup.
As I was thinking about this, as we got, closer to this game, and closer to recording this, I thought, went back and forth because, we were on the opposite side of the correct pick last go round because we were like Auburn can't, be this good. They're due for a loss, all of this, but they're not going to lose in Neville Arena.
Yeah.
So we were shocked last time.
No, we said they're overdue, and boy,
Yeah.
were they overdue when Florida got them. Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about Auburn right now. We saw Florida's stinker game. Thankfully, they were able to kind of come back and win it to get to the Final Four. But also now I'm like, well, thought that about them last time. Like, but here we are. It's just a hard hard game to pick because both of these teams are so good. They're consistent, but they both have inconsistencies that could put them in a place to lose this game.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit on three things. And then Maddie respond to them. Let's just go through them. Number one, I look at the guards on Florida, and they're super experienced. Elijah Martin, Will Richard, and Walter Clayton, super experienced guards. I think the guards for Florida are better than the guards on Auburn. And like they have talented guards, Miles Kelly, Tahad Pettiford, and all these Chad Baker, Mazzara, Denver Jones, the very good guards on Auburn. I just see what Florida has, and I go, I think those guards are one shade better. And then I look at the front court for Auburn, and you got Janai Broome, Dylan Cardwell, Chaney Johnson, who's stepped up big this year. Really good players like that. And I'm like, those guys, that to me is the more talented front court. But I also look at Florida's front court, and it's like that front court can do a lot of things. They got Alex Condon, who can make a big contribution in some other areas too. And I'm like, these guys are good. I'm not sure, like, talent wise, I think Auburn's the better front court. And, when you have guys who can eat minutes like Janai Broome and put up big performances, I think that negates some of that depth. So I think it's a wash there. But really, the third point I'm going to make is when these two faced off last time, the turnover battle Florida actually lost. However, it was the points off those turnovers and opportunities that Florida had that really got them the win, because we were 14 fast break points to Auburn's three fast break points, and they had 17 points off turnovers. The Gators did a really good 17 points off 12 turnovers is not bad. They had better, and that to me is going to be the key to this basketball game because these teams are both so good. They both can shoot, they both can rebound, they both have all this stuff. It's who makes the mistakes to me is who's going to win this basketball game overall, because like I'm not ripping apart a flex offense versus a modern style approach that Todd Golden does, and Bruce doesn't play flex anymore. He uses the flex to draw up some of his plays and modernizes it, but we can get into that conversation later. Flex won him a national championship at D2, but like it's not going to be those X's and O's. It's going to who's make a mistake. I really feel like, and I think the experience for Florida kind of helps them, but they got some key leadership on this Auburn team.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you really made good points there, especially when you talked about kind of, like I said, kind of some inconsistencies that I think put both of these teams in dangers. I think for me, one of the big ones is Auburn getting into foul trouble. I think that's a very real possibility in this basketball game, especially in that backcourt. Like you said, you got a few more talented guards on Florida, just a little bit upper tier. So I think that defense is going to have to be spot on to keep them from scoring. But you got to do it without fouling. And I think that is going to be one of the big key components in this game also.
I will say, if I'm looking out for a player, it's Janai Broome, because you talk about Florida's performances. Derek Queen had a good game against Florida. Then you also talk about JT Toppin, quiet, felt like the quietest 20 points you'll ever see, but had a good game against Florida. Florida doesn't have a dominant big; they have good bigs. Is the difference here, and I think this is a game that if Janai Broome is able to put the team on his shoulders, he can take them to the finish line. I think that's the key area here. And then I think the defensive performance in Florida's backcourt will make the difference for them if they can get those steals, make Auburn's guards make mistakes like they did in the first game. To me, that'll be the difference in this one. And then that perimeter defense, that was another area Florida simply outshot Auburn around the 3-point line as well. And played some really good perimeter defense against Auburn in their first matchup there in Neville. So hard to pull these teams apart. Like I said, more than anything else, I think it's going to come down to the margin. Big board scores. Both these teams, follow those trends to a T, almost to a T, for national champions contenders. Computers got this one 81-80 at 52%. You tell me, folks, who's winning this basketball game, because a 2% difference in 1 point on the computer is
That might be the closest one we've seen.
that's pretty darn close. That's pretty. Texas Xavier might be closer, but yeah, that's about as close as you possibly can get in a computer analysis from Gimbom for sure. But yeah, I don't know who's gonna win this one, but I guarantee whoever's gonna win this one is gonna get two big challenges in a row here in the Final Four. So this is gonna be a big one to watch and a fun basketball game. Auburn looking for revenge. Florida trying to prove that it's not a fluke. Let's go to the next one. Duke and Houston. One team I really don't like, and one team that is named Houston. So Maddie, share your thoughts on this game. We're not going to give this the same kind of attention that we are with the Florida and Auburn games naturally, but just as a potential next opponent, kind of let's give some talk here about these two teams.
I mean, like you said, not Duke fans here, but it is very unfortunate for them that this is in San Antonio because that place is going to be flooded with Houston fans.
We can only pray.
But no, I feel like we talked a lot about Houston in that kind of Tennessee preview the other day before the Elite Eight happened, and they are just a very well balanced team. And you've got Kelvin Sampson running your X's and O's, and I just feel like that's a recipe for success. So I'm not putting any doubt on this Houston team. While Duke has been one of the best teams this season, I still feel like they're just not complete. They've got some good guys, they've got go-to guys, but I feel like once you have a full complete team against them, something's going to fall apart, and we've seen it a handful of times this season.
I think what it comes down to me is that how do these young players react to the kind of defense that Houston plays? And that to me is the biggest thing. I do think Duke is a complete team. I just think they're a very young complete team. And when you look at their roster and you talk about Cooper Flagg as a freshman and you talk about Conga Nibble being a freshman, and then you talk about the rest of these guys who were very young on this team like Malak, they're a young team with NBA talent. Caleb Foster is only a sophomore, but he's good. Isaiah Evans is good, but he's a freshman. This is a huge stage these guys are about to go play on. They've done well throughout the course of this tournament, but I'm just sitting here going, the way that Houston plays defense is unlike a lot of teams, and it is in your face. You go back to the Alabama game and where they just let Cooper Flagg go ISO at the end of the half. That's not how Houston plays basketball. And anytime there's a screen, they blitz the screen, which I feel like if you have a young player with the ball in their hands there in that moment, that causes pressure and can cause some fear, and cause a mistake to happen. And recency is a thing. Earlier this season, we were watching Cooper Flagg and Concanipple and just really going, they are doing the freshman thing so hard right now. It was a joke on social media. It's tune into Duke basketball for which freshman blows a big game at the beginning. That was the joke at the beginning back in November. And here they are, they're going to play a very experienced, very aggressive defense against them. And I'm curious how they answer that question now. I'm curious, have these guys matured so much over the course of this year that they're ready for it? Or is it going to be this Houston defense really messes up this young team? And to me, that's going to be the question. I know John Shire has talked about the headspace and all the stuff with his players being really good, but sometimes experience has it. Well, actually, I would just put it this way. experience has a way of showing itself here in the NCAA tournament, and I just feel like it just hasn't happened yet to Duke. And they're about to get a very experienced Houston team playing against them. Maddie, kind of your thoughts on this because here's a really good Duke team that everybody loves.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those that you are going to have, like I said, this very complete Houston team against, but I'll agree with that. Duke is a complete team. They're just very, very young. And I think with Kelvin Sampson setting those plays running, knowing that that is exactly how Duke is set up, he's going to take that experience. He's going to put pressure um, on kids that haven't felt that kind of pressure before. And he's going to put them in uncomfortable situations just because he knows that's how he's going to either induce a turnover or he is going to, um, be able to get his guys in an open spot because he's going to put these young Duke players in situations where they're going to have to make a tough decision and more than likely make that freshman decision.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to find out when it comes to that front. The other side of this too is Houston shoots extremely well. They're a good shooting team from deep. It's with the size that Duke has, they're going to have some issues from the inside because, like, let's face it, this Houston team has already struggled this season from the inside. But you talk about the 3-point shooting in this team, LJ Cryer, Milo Suzan, and then Emmanuel Sharp. These guys have shot a combined like I think it's like nearly 600 shots from three this season. Like 530, actually it's about 540, 540, maybe a little bit higher than that. Yeah. No, yeah, 540, 540-ish, 550-ish. They've been there. And then the other thing you're going to notice really quick in this game is that Houston's smaller than Duke. And if Duke can make it about athleticism and they're executing, I think that's going to make a difference. So this is a big game for Jawan Roberts, and this is a big game for Tugler and those guys who have to be the free safety and the defense that kind of Kelvin Sampson plays. It's really interesting that people have used football terms to describe this defense. But like they use that free safety trap out there to force things to the wings. And I think that's where Duke, if they're going to win this game, has to excel in their athleticism and they have to make that correct pass against this team. Now, here's the good news: is that if you recall back in November, Todd Pettiford was out there making those correct passes when they went to go visit Houston earlier this season when Auburn went down there. So we'll see if Duke makes the same calls and makes those same correct decisions and plays well in the gaps, which where you have to play and knowing where the ball is actually going to be open, not just letting your eyes lie to you in that instant situation of we have to get this ball out of my hands because there's two defenders on me and the baselines over here. Or the halfway court lines over here. So it's a matter of their response. It is a matter of their response really in this game. Kim Palm's got this one airtight too. It is technically the bigger of the two here in the Final Four, but it's Kim Cuter's got it 68-66 at 57% going to Duke. We'll find out. Like that's going to be a great basketball game. I got a feeling too. And the other thing is that Duke doesn't play fast. Neither does Houston. So which style is going to end up prevailing in this one? I think it's all going to come down to Houston's defense versus Duke's offense. And I think that's where the game's going to be won and lost in this one for both teams overall. So tough one to pull apart. And just so everybody else knows, this is a Duke team who has won 15 straight games, which is the nation's second longest active streak, versus a Houston team who has won 17 straight games, the nation's longest active winning streak. That one's going to be a fun one. Maddie, who do you got for your national championship game? What are you going with?
So in my national championship game, I'm going Houston and Florida, and I think Houston comes out the victor.
Okay, I'll go Auburn and Duke for an incredible rematch from what went down in Cameron Indoor, and this time it's going to be on a neutral site because I still think if you play that game in Neville, Auburn wins by 10. If you rewind that back to where we were and put that game in Neville instead of Cameron Indoor, I would have Auburn winning that one. So that's going to be it's a good Final Four. I think there's a different scenario everywhere. Like I said, these teams are putting up numbers similar, analytics numbers similar UConn last year, except we got 4 of them this time. So this should be a great tournament. Um, just so everybody also knows, fastest team here, Florida, 59th fastest team in the country. And then when we were talking about those schedules earlier, the ACC school, Duke has played the weakest schedule out of everyone here in this group. Auburn, as we know, they're ridiculous. Their schedule has been insane. They've played the second hardest schedule according to Kim Palm this season. Guys, if you have not already, please like and subscribe to the Hoop Southbound Show. We greatly appreciate having you guys here. We are getting the 4 best teams. Like, I know there wasn't a lot of upsets or anything else at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of this tournament and whatnot, but we're getting the 4 best teams in the country facing off in the Final Four. So this is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to watch high quality basketball at the end of the day. I like the upsets. I love the drama of March too, but this is also unique upon itself. And just when you have 4 teams playing at this level, how entertaining that's going to be. If you have not already, subscribe to the Hoop Southbound Show. We greatly appreciate it. Welcome to the madness as we continue our coverage here in March. We hope you guys join us as we finish this thing out. I will not be here on Saturday for this show. So if Maddie wants to do a solo show or see if she can't get somebody to join her and she can edit the show together, she may or may not have something out for you guys on Sunday. But we will be back, as we do every year, sometime Tuesday morning. And I say Tuesday morning because we will record the show Monday night after the national championship game. That's when we'll be back and we'll talk about the national championship game and everything else. We'll do a little stuff to kind of finish out the year, talk about the year and whatnot, finishing that out. And then we finally start off-season content after that. But this is the end of the show. Please like and subscribe, follow us for more. We do basketball all season long just because, the tournament's going on and the tournament's coming to the end. Transfer portal's right around the corner. NBA draft's right around the corner. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about this offseason as well. So join us, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.